Hello. Now, in our afternoon session, in our panel, Digitalization as the driver of economic recovery in Central and Eastern Europe. First, I would like to invite Mr. Počivalšek. He is the Minister of Economic Development and Technology of Slovenia to give us a keynote speech. Please, Mr. Počivalšek.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bled Strategic Forum. A bit different this year, but still an important platform for dialogue on trends and key issues that Europe and the world are facing in the 21st century. Today, pluralistic dialogues are crucial for setting the common strategies on rebuilding our systems to be more sustainable and resilient. The COVID-19 health crisis has come as a shock, but it has brought necessary changes that were processing at a different pace before. It has definitely accelerated the use of development of digitalization. Digitalization has been playing an increasingly important role as the new driver for economic growth and social transformation. The countries of Central and Eastern Europe are well positioned to take advantage of the potential of digitalization to boost their productivity and in doing so increase the prosperity of their populations. Maintaining the competitiveness in the global arena by using digitalization is especially relevant for this region since the size of domestic markets limits growth opportunities, the role of the governments is thus of high importance. The digitalization of society and the economy remains one of Slovenia's key opportunities. We are proud that we have recently set up Europe's first international research center for artificial intelligence in Ljubljana under the auspices of UNESCO. To emphasize, Slovenia will continue with creative and smart vision towards faster development of digital society built on science and information technologies to achieve an even stronger position of Slovenian economy in smart solutions on the global level. I am convinced that this panel will show interesting insights into the digitalization perspective and offer various ideas on our new reality. We need to embrace the digitalization and take a collective action to build economies that deliver inclusive economic growth, prosperity, and safety for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Now let me introduce our panelists for today. On my right-hand side, Mr. Tit Risalo. He's the Director of the Office of the President of the Republic of Estonia. Mr. Simon Zajc, State Secretary, Ministry of Economic Development and Technology of the Republic of Slovenia. Mr. Cristian Paulu from Sandoz. He's responsible for strategy, business, and competitive insights, global portfolio, and transformation. Mr. Marko Grobelnik, he's an expert research in artificial intelligence laboratory at Jožef Stefan Institute and UNESCO International Research Center on AI, and CEO of quintelligence.com. We also have, because we are a digital panel, two digital participants. Do we see each other? Mr. Ulrich Knudsen, he's the Deputy Secretary General from OECD. And Mr. Joško Mrnje, he is Country Manager, Adriatics Region at Google. Hello. Hello. And my name is Katja Mohar-Bastar. I'm the Director of Digital Innovation Hub from Slovenia. So digitalization is in my really high interest to be happening here and now. Today we already heard so many interesting insights on how to proceed in post-COVID area. We already heard so many strategic insights. So I would like to ask first question to Mr. Grobelnik because of artificial intelligence and the influence of disruptions and unpredictable events. How do they affect future developments?
So disruptions and unpredicted events, right? So these are best opportunities actually for innovation. Sometimes these disruptions are, of course, negative, comes with casualties, or this can be wars or natural disasters, or even COVID, which was a very unusual one, right? So what happens really when this kind of changes happen? So suddenly the usual norms in a society are not there anymore, and the normal becomes a new normal, right? And typically a system needs a while, right? So it depends really on the type of event to get stabilized again. Now, in this period of time, between this unpredictable event happens and when the system gets in another new normal, right? So this is the time of opportunity which we need really to use. And we still are, right? So we still are in this COVID period. So it's unclear, maybe the first wave ended or the second wave maybe started, or it's unclear from all the curves as we looking for, but the consequences, right, not just the health ones, but economic, societal, and other, right, very likely will last for at least a year or two. Everybody knows this, right? Maybe the virus will go away, right, but the consequences will still be there. So this is time when we can actually do something new. Now, let's say if you look like 6 months ago when in February, March, when things started happening, what happened? So COVID appeared, and for instance, research community, which has very traditional, slow pace of innovation, suddenly everybody moved, right? Moved in an unusual way. And if you look across all the sciences, not just let's say artificial intelligence or biochemistry or medical sciences, all the sciences started moving into this COVID related topics. Sometimes these topics were almost, let's say, one wouldn't recognize COVID in that topics, but certainly there was some remote connection. And now if you look like 6 months after, right, so we can say that there was plenty of innovations which wouldn't have happened otherwise. So this is the profit we have, right? So now I'm not in a proponent for having crisis like this, but maybe you remember that statement, right? Don't waste a good crisis, right? So this is what I'm trying to say. So, and this is a good crisis, and we really shouldn't waste it, right? So much for now.
Good crisis for digitalization, you meant probably.
No. It's not a crisis for digitalization. It's opportunity for
digitalization.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mr. Risalu, you come from Estonia. Estonia for us is a digital champion. How did anything change during the COVID, or you just proceeded with your day-to-day work? Everything is already digitalized. Tell us something about your country experience, please.
Yes, first I want to thank the organizers of having me, and it's still a pleasure to be invited. We know that we're well aware that one day maybe we're not invited anymore because you pass us. And thanks, of course, for having this weather, so it really makes me feel like at home. But yes, the answer is yes and no, in the sense that, of course, we were pretty well prepared. Actually, today in the morning here was an AmCham business breakfast, and they did an exercise, as usually is done in the conferences nowadays, that in the app you could write, you know, one word that sort of catches the essence of the current time in the best way. And organizers asked not to write COVID or virus, but something next to it that comes in mind. And the two biggest keywords that came out were digitalization and trust. And this is what we have been doing in Estonia for quite a long time, digitalizing the government side and also the private sector, and in the course of digitalization, building up trust. Because digitalization in itself, you know, in most of the cases, not rocket science, but building a trust in these services takes quite a long time. And in Estonia, the EGovernment was launched in 2002. So we had, as our neighbors know, Estonians are slow. So we had quite a long time for learning, and I think in this sense we were pretty well prepared, the public sector. But of course also things changed, and although we had you know, government and public sector level crisis scenario, sort of what a military guys do usually, I don't remember the name, operations or something like this. Then of course doing it, so putting the government members in different rooms and saying that, you know, the internet is not on, and then looking how it will be evolving is one thing, but if it one day hits you in practice, it's the other thing. So there was a lot of learning. But of course, we try to do this also in a digital way. Just to bring you an example, Estonia is also a pretty well-known startup country, though there is a good mentality and expertise in this. So we all the startup community and accelerators launched a global crisis hack campaign, which ended up with 15,000 participants in 98 countries. And I understand around 20 really useful applications and platforms were created. But what's the point of it is that these things were not created in Estonia, they were created globally. And what we also learned from this is that I think the first reaction for everybody is to close down. But then you understand, and this is crisis time, the communication and trusting each other and building the trust is very, very important to sort of take the path forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mrnje, has COVID-19 really led to a digital transformation, or has it merely pushed some digital trends like smart working? Which sectors did you see in Google? Okay, I don't see you.
Yeah, right behind you.
Okay.
First of all, thank you guys for having me, and it's a true pleasure. Can you hear me well? Perfect. So thank you for your question. I mean, just like every one of us, we've noticed, you know, different changes and different stuff going around us from moment one. Maybe just a small intro, you know, it's quite indicative for me when we see how this digital transformation worked prior to COVID and now with COVID. I remember when the lockdown started, there was a meme saying, who has to be attributed mostly for the overall digital transformation? And I believe it was CEO, it was CMO, and it was COVID. And probably the credit goes to all three of them, but to COVID goes the speed of it. And as you remember, when things started to happen, we were all in lockdown, and suddenly I have noticed that things around me have changed incredibly fast. basic stuff. How do I get fresh vegetables and fruits when everything is shut down except groceries? But then I would like to have them, from the market. And what happened was, I found a lot of newly branded sites who were aggregators, social groups, extremely dynamic situation when everybody was talking to everyone. So we all felt it on a personal level. But if I would have to sum it up from a bit of a larger or broader global perspective, what we have been seeing here at Google for the last, I would say now it's almost 5 to 6 months, there was a very, very strong increase in e-commerce and overall search for online shopping in general, which is, again, a consequence of many people being at home, starting to order different stuff because they were not able to be physically present. This is a trend that started, but it's not necessarily slowing down so much. The second one was the way we work. As you can see, everything became remote, and it will continue further in that sense. And maybe the third thing that almost exploded as well in a positive sense was e-learning. As people were in their surroundings and at homes, they started to learn and take many different courses from very different aspects. So in a nutshell, I would say these three trends are something that is quite visible to all of us, including, of course, my personal experience.
Thank you. And Mr. Paolo, how do you see the influence, how did it influence the epidemic to your business? To Sandoz it must be well, but also for you as a strategic and transformation head of department. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for the kind invitation for this panel. Look, let me take you back, and your question is about disruption and is about what we did about this disruption. Let me take you back half a year, so in February or March. So as Sandoz, we are one of the largest suppliers of basic and essential medicines in the world, and we are the largest supplier of these basic and essential medications in Europe. So we are providing our patients with dozens of billions of pills every year across Europe, with hundreds of millions of patients. In Europe, I would say there is some systemic relevance. So back in February, we faced a perfect storm. And we faced a couple of challenges at the same time that we had not expected to come up at the same time. That was a strong increase in demand, doubling and tripling of the demand for some very important medications, as all patients and doctors also were trying to get a bit of a personal stockpile of patients. At the same point in time, we saw signs of interruption of global supply chains. There was still a lot of problems with China. There were some other countries, mainly countries outside Europe, that started to have export bans on important pharmaceutical supply. And at the same point in time, we had to send home our employees. Basically all employees across the world. So that's more than 10,000 employees for Sandoz, and we are part of Novartis. So it's more than 100,000 employees at Novartis who suddenly, basically from one day, literally 1 week to another, had to be equipped with tools to work from home. So you can imagine that kept us up at night. Now, it's half a year later, and the very positive story is that we were able to keep up supply with pharmaceuticals. And our colleagues in technical operations have worked really, really very hard, so that we haven't seen any major supply interruption anywhere in the world or so with our essential medicines. But now the positive part of the story, we called it, some of the panelists called it opportunity before, is we saw a tremendous jump in the uptake of digital ways to work. And that refers to digital operations, that refers to digital interactions with our customers and our stakeholders, and that refers to the way how we work. So nowadays, being on a video conference is the new normal. When we interact with doctors, before the crisis in Slovenia, we had about 20% of the doctors who we were able to approach via digital channels. Now this is 70%. This went up overnight. And when you look at operations, in a broad industry alliance and also in our company, we have put tools in place, to track down each individual pack and where it is on the world. And on operations, on customer interface, and on the way we work, we have ambitious goals, to further extract value and opportunity from this crisis.
Wow, very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Paolo. And Mr. Knudsen, hello. As OECD, can I ask you for an overview among the countries? How do you see the CEE region, Central and Eastern Europe, and the EU and the rest of the world? How did we behave in the digital way? Who were the leaders who were lagging behind? Can you give us some OECD analytics, please? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I was there with you physically last year, and I have fond memories of that. I'm sorry I can only join you digitally this year because of the crisis. Really, the gravity of the crisis, I think, was spelled out in our latest economic outlook, where we predict between 6 and 7.6% recession this year, or negative growth. And I'll just remind you that since the end of the Second World War, there's only been one single calendar year in the history where we've had negative growth. That was 2009, 0.1% negative growth. So if the world ends up with between 6 and 8% negative growth this year, that shows you how serious this is. And in many ways, the crisis has amplified some megatrends that were already there. To a large part, that's negative. That means that we've seen a continuation of deglobalization, a shortening of value chains. We've seen perhaps also a deepening of geopolitical tensions. But the digital transformation, and there I agree with the earlier speakers on this panel, the digital transformation is perhaps the one exception, the positive exception, because we already had a very rapid pace of digital transformation before the crisis, but that has certainly accelerated over the last couple of months. I hear people saying that in just 4 months, we have actually had developments in the digital sphere that would correspond to 4 years. So maybe we've taken big leaps forward here. Who are the winners and losers? I think the jury is still out on that. I think for the Central and Eastern European region, this really now is about getting access to internet and access to computers. On some accounts in some countries, there is only 1/3 or to 1/2 that have access to broadband or fixed broadband internet, and the same goes with the reliable computers. So I would say that for your region, this is, as one of the previous speakers said, this is a crisis that we cannot waste, that you cannot waste. You need to get on the digital train, if you like, and I'm absolutely certain that the countries who speed up, and this is both governments and business, the countries who speed up their take-up of digital, be that in AI or cloud-based services or e-commerce or machine learning, whatever, I think they will probably come out in the new economy as the new winners. This is a time of maybe unprecedented unpredictability for the world. Not a lot of certainties, but I think there is one certainty, and it is that the world economy will look different post-COVID than pre-COVID. And one of the most important factors of competition will now be the digital uptake. So that would be my advice to all countries in the OECD and not least Central and Eastern Europe.
And now, while we are comparing, Mr. Zajec, how would you assess Slovenia's digital progress through DESI index?
Well, thank you for the question. Good afternoon to everyone. Actually, I'm glad that I can point out that Slovenia is doing actually pretty well. We have improved the score in all 5 dimensions. We're not quite there where Estonia is, but that is our target. And one good news also is that all 11 emerging countries have improved their scores in 2019. As I said, Slovenia did well in all 5 dimensions, but we did especially well in digital public services. And this is because we took some steps in the past few years that have helped us to do this. For example, we have set up business portals for our own and also foreign entrepreneurs. And right now in Slovenia, it's easier to set up a new company than it has ever been before in the past. Also, we've introduced e-invoicing, and I must say that Slovenia is also really good in public data. Our companies rank in the top third in the EU regarding the reuse of public sector data. Also, what have been a major improvement is in the e-health department was the sickness certificates. This can be now submitted fully automatically to the internet, and our assessment is that because of this new improvement, our companies in Slovenia will be able to save up to 16 million per year because only of this one measure. Of course, we're not stopping here. We are preparing new steps and new measures in the future. One example of such a new step is next year we hope that we will be able to introduce our e-identity national card. That is something that's coming in the future, and this is all we're doing this because we want to be more productive. And also one of our goals is to be above the EU average in this index. Currently only, if we look at the CEE countries, only Lithuania and Estonia are there, but we hope to be there pretty soon.
Thank you. So maybe if we continue with e-government, previously we discussed about how you get the prolongation of driver's license in Estonia. Can you please tell Mr. Risalo also that to our audience, maybe how do you manage e-government and other services? And what measures must be taken according also to trust and to other specifics to make us as successful as you are?
Yeah, thank you for the compliment, but I think the driving license will not be the most crucial public service in the future when the cars will be self-driving. But yeah, still it is. I think the concept behind this is what is important. What we try to develop in the public sector. As we have this trust that we spoke about of the population to trust their data safely to the government. So government can do useful things with this data, and what we try to do, what is the aim of the public sector in Estonia in a targeted program, is to make as much public services sort of invisible, that actually a citizen receiving the service does not have any interaction with the state or municipal authority. And that lets me explain. The one simple example is the driving license. So we have the data, medical data about my health in the e-health system. The car register has the data when my car license expires. So they can, these two institutions can change safely information over the so-called information layer called X-Road, which is also encrypted using a KSI blockchain. And so there is actually no need for me to do anything, and that's how we build it up. So one day I simply go to the mailbox and I will get the new driving license. And the same goes, for example, for child support. You know, we know when the kid is born, she or he gets the personal code. There is written in the law what parents are entitled for the first child, for the second child. So why should I run some office to fulfill any kind of application or even tick some boxes in the internet? You know, the government knows, municipality knows, and so I should get this, I don't know, 500 euros without any intervention from my side. So I think this is the future, and then there are a lot of services if you look in the public sector that could be run in this way, and you have to look at it in a concentrated way, and you know. We are well aware of all the problems, and the main problems are between the silos. So people are fond of their jobs, and they think that it's really unique, and you know, the data will be misused, and you just have to get over it. There's nothing to do.
Thank you. Marco, can I ask you to reply on this one? It's to be data, the importance of data, the possibility of self-conducting bureaucratization, and what do you comment on this?
The key thing first is that somebody recognizes, or somebody, this means typically decision makers, right? That actually data is has the value, right? So, and this is not very obvious, right? Maybe it looks obvious to people sitting here, but when it really comes to a situation, the first reaction is, many years ago was, data, right? So let's save money on this storage and let's delete the data. Okay, later on, data was stored, right? And then data was considered as, okay, maybe interesting, right? And then if we go 2 steps further, we can experience the fear of data. And we are now roughly in this position. So, oh, well, data. So, and plus a little bit of AI, maybe better not to touch it because unpredictable things can happen, right? So the neighbor can learn something about us. I mean, metaphorically saying neighbor, right? This is, I'm tracking this maturity from, let's say, 80s on, right? Now, I would say that the data revolution really happened after September 11. So this was when the importance of data was recognized mainly, okay, to find terrorists and so on, and to introduce this super, let's say, data mining. Back then was called data mining, as a popular term, right? To discover who is talking to whom and to discover terrorists and possibly dangerous situation. But then this had as a consequence development of many tools, right? So 90s, maybe you remember, it was a term called data warehousing. Okay, this was just organizing a little bit of data, but not much more. But then 2000s, really after September 11, after this huge push of investments in US, the whole, again, this was disruption, as we discussed before, kind of, so Americans didn't waste this good crisis back then, and invested lots of money in projects, people, technology, and as a consequence, the whole industry happened, right, and evolved. Remember, so back then, Google appeared and many others, Facebook, Twitter a little bit later, and so on. All these data companies actually happened in this wave after September 11. And yeah, what happened after 2010 was then AI happened, right? So there were a couple of breakthroughs, not too many, maybe 1 or 2, right? And this caused actually, as a consequence, the fact that pretty much everything what we do on a mobile phone or on internet, we are not even aware that AI kind of algorithms, some of these innovations are typically helping us to be a little bit more efficient, right? So this is this story of data, right? Data is on the bottom, right? But now we are already in the stage where, independent of the maturity of a nation, right, or where a particular nation is on a DESI index or in whatever digital maturity, schema. Everybody's using this, right? Because this knowledge or this technology propagates all over. The question is only who is developing this or who is selling. It's better question is who is selling the technology, not who is developing, because development happens now very distributed these days. What's interesting, right? The innovations didn't stop there, right? So me as a researcher, I see things which are coming maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. They're already there, right? So we do this in the labs, not just us, also others, right? So typically research is like maybe five to 10 years ahead of commercial solutions, right? And it's interesting to see that disruptions which will come in the next 5 years are much higher than this fairly simple AI, which everybody's impressed with, but it's nothing compared to what's coming, right? Many of the jobs will probably require a little bit of reskilling to get maybe a little bit higher quality life for the people which are maybe today not very happy, and also, okay, this is more like a humor, right? But what's more important is probably these calls in the next, maybe not 3 years, but maybe the next 10 years, maybe a new type of social contract, because some of these technologies will probably disrupt the job market to the degree which will require a little bit different distribution of wealth, right? Yeah, so the question was about the data. Yeah, so everything comes from very simple data, right? From very simple data, and now these are just stack of technologies which actually extract something useful out of this data.
So let's ask somebody who has a lot of data. Mr. Mrnje, how do you see CEE region? How should digitalization secure the growth path for the countries in the region? What is Google doing right now? What are your models for the future at the moment? And what do you do with our data? That was a joke.
Thank you for your questions, quite a few. So let me start first reflecting on the CEE region. CEE region, in my view, has a strong opportunity for digitalization because it is already there. And if you look at historically about the opportunities in traditional mature industries, I would say that we could be quite competitive, and we already are in our digital surrounding. Primary, secondary education, number of STEM students, pretty decent infrastructure. And if we could avoid in the future, because it was happening because of course, many countries joining the EU and a lot of young people going elsewhere to look for good jobs, I think we're pretty decently set up for a good digital overall opportunity. I think part of the researches within EU was that by 2030, 90% of jobs in EU will require either basic or digital skills. So I think education is an absolute key for CEE. And when I say education, I mean on all levels, whether this is a public sector, a commercial one, a schooling system, educational, but it's an absolute key because the more we know, the vast majority of opportunities coming out. And maybe on this learning process, we have done many things. But I think locally, I think one that I'm most proud of, we have a program called Grow with Google, which has been launched in our countries, particularly in the region in Slovenia and Croatia, but definitely in entire CEE. And basically, it's a completely free module for everyone to get acquainted and get certified about basic digital skills. And this is not necessarily Google related. It basically goes just wider. Globally, during COVID time, Google has launched a significant support to different businesses. I think it was a grant of $800 million, out of which I would say maybe the local one that we felt the strongest was the ads grant of 300 million for the small and medium businesses. We have launched mobile community reports. Products like Google Meet and some of our G Suite products are for free, I think, by the end of September. So in a way, we're trying pretty strongly to support all of this growth. But to come back on your question in particular for CE, I think there is a strong opportunity, and especially if these knowledge hubs would come further together and not be necessarily in a different country, that would give us even further opportunity. Hopefully, maybe in the future, even more venture capitalists, which I believe are important to boost the overall build-up of startups and technology in the region.
Thank you. And Mr. Paulo, what factors are important for achieving greater productivity and the competitiveness in company in the digitalization sense? You already started to answer my question previously, but please continue on this one also.
So what you are referring to is actually a major topic, and this is, the ongoing struggle for always increased efficiency. I think what's important is two things. So first of all, it's a curiosity and the willingness to jump into these new areas, and then it's finding the right environment and also geographic environment to implement these things. So let me give you one or two examples of what I mean. So I give you one example of how we are interacting with our customers. And that's an example from Slovenia. So what we are doing as a company, as a broader company, as Novartis, a big provider of healthcare, is we have set up a telemedicine system in Slovenia for patients that are suffering from a very severe disease, that is heart failure. These patients have a very much impaired quality of life. They're typically seeing lots and lots of doctors, of generalists, of specialists, of nurses, and improving their quality of life by enabling to be monitored much better from their homes through wearables and through digital ways to submit their data and to work with their data by healthcare providers is really helping these patients a lot. And it's not been by mere chance, so that this is something that Slovenia is a front runner, because you have some advantages here. So you have high curiosity across CEE, I would state, on these, let's say, digital technologies. And also, size does matter in a maybe slightly counterintuitive way. As here we are working with the two major hubs, with Ljubljana and with Maribor, and basically with that we cover the majority of the country. Let me give you another example that illustrates, maybe how we bring efficiency also out to our internal operations, so not just to our patients, but how we work as a company. One of the big challenges that you have as a company is your financial and your production planning. So I told you now we're producing billions of drugs every year. So there's always a question like, how do we need to plan production for the next year? Where will be the demand and so, and also how much are we going to sell, like in dollar terms or euro terms next year. And now there is an interesting phenomenon if you give this to humans, because if you ask them to forecast the sales for next year, guess what happens? I mean, usually the people will forecast on the low side, and they will come up with all the things that may happen and all the things on the crisis and everything. If you ask them about the production planning, they say like, well, we're going to sell a lot because they want that there is available supply. So what some of our colleagues did with the help of artificial intelligence tools is that, like, look, I mean, can't we automate this? I mean, can't we put this out of the human domain into an artificial intelligence domain? And you can, and that's actually what we are doing. So, this was established some time ago. So what we found out is that for 70 or 80% of our products, the results when we give this to an algorithm is better than when we give it to humans. Not in 100%, because there are things for which you need a human brain, especially products that have just recently been put to the market. For me, this whole topic of forecasting in a company and beyond is one of the things that I'm really excited about when you talk about efficiency in digital.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Knudsen, has the productivity growth really changed due to ongoing digitalization across OECD countries recently? What effects can be foreseen? This is
Yes, well, thank you for that question. It may be the most difficult question of the day because, can you hear me?
Yes, but we cannot see you. Now we can see you as well.
I can see me now, but
Okay.
I'm right behind you.
Okay.
No, I think this is one of the most difficult questions that economists are asking themselves these days, because we've talked so much about the impact from the digital transformation, and it's not a new thing. This is not something that arrived with Corona. But for some reason, we have not seen this rapid digital transformation translate into productivity gains. And there are many answers to that, but we're not quite sure which one is the right one. We are hoping perhaps that there is a lag here somehow, that some of the gains from digital transformation have not yet materialized in productivity gains, because our economies certainly need them. Not least in Europe, have we had a decade of almost no productivity growth, and it'll be very difficult to get out of this crisis economically if we do not have productivity gains. I think if we scratch a little bit below the surface, the picture is slightly more nuanced, because there are actually frontier companies where productivity really is on the rise, and then you have laggards where you have no productivity gains at all. So there's a mixed picture, and we need to learn from the companies where productivity gains are actually there. One last thing I'll say about this is that there's a huge potential with small and medium enterprises, SMEs. This is a hugely important group of companies to almost all of our members in the OECD, and also all the countries in Central Eastern Europe. And we see that there is a huge difference in growth potential between SMEs who have a high degree of digitalization and the ones who don't. So I think governments and business need to help SMEs really embrace the digital transformation to a much fuller degree than we've seen over the last couple of years. I think that is one of the keys to getting digital transformation translated into productivity gains.
Thank you very much, and I couldn't agree more, because what is Digital Innovation Hub doing is exactly support SMEs for digitalization. So now I have the last question for the panelists, and it's about the future trends and future plans. So maybe Mr. Zaitz, can you start with your answer on this one?
Yeah, we all know that digitalization is going to remain one of main goals, also at the EU level, as well as on the level of the countries. What we are doing right now is just this moment. We have put out a tender, a public tender, in the amount of 15 million for small and medium-sized enterprises to digitally transfer. This is happening right now. But then our focus is also on the next financial perspective from 2021 to 27, where we are preparing all the basis for the measures to help small and medium-sized enterprises to digitally transform. Also, our focus now is on the new possibilities during the REACT EU, where we are also preparing reforms and investment plans, which also include transformation of our industry, such as smart factories, and so on. And as was said before, this year we have also set up Council for Debureaucratization in the cabinet of our Prime Minister. I'm a member of this council, and one of these things is also what we want to do is, because the government has pretty much all or a lot of data, but in Slovenia, as you all know, although we do have this information, we still have to duplicate with the forms and click so many times. And one of our goals is to merge all these bases that we already have into one working system where we could make things as easy as possible for the companies to do their business in Slovenia and also for the citizens to live in Slovenia without the burden that the government or administration puts on them, because we were not able so far to connect and to merge these bases. And I hope that we will be successful in this goal, because it's going to be good for all of us and it's going to help us move on the scale.
Thank you very much. I hope that you will be successful as well. So now I have one last question for all of you, the same one. It's a bit of Miss World question. Is how can we use digitalization to become a better world? I mean, like environmental friendly, so more social, more cultural. Who can I ask first? Yes, please.
Yeah, it concerns the future in general, and I'm not a futurologist or oracle, so I don't know what the future exactly brings, but I'm used to work with the concrete plans, and one of the plans that we have in mind that we want to share with Central Eastern European area is, as we know, we have talked about that digitalization comes anyway, and data is a new gold. So, but not any kind of data. It is only data that can be interoperable. And to have interoperable data, you need cooperation and cooperation frameworks. And we have one of these frameworks in the Central and Eastern Europe. There are many, but one is, I think, now gaining sort of traction. It's the Free Seas initiative, that the aim of which is to build digital transport and energy infrastructures in our area of 12 member states, from Baltic to the Adriatic and Black Seas. And Estonia is right now having the presidency of this initiative. And what we propose in the framework of this initiative is a plan called Smart Connectivity. So the plan is actually here. We have it ready. It will be launched in October in Tallinn. But the basic idea of this is, as we have been speaking about data and interoperability, is to push to link our energy grids and our transportation infrastructure with a digital layer, with a smart enablers, so that it's planned in the way that it creates enough usable data, and we can trust each other with this data, so this infrastructure will be really future-proof. It will be a 21st century infrastructure. Now, let's say that the lorry comes down from the Tallinn port, and it has to end up in Copperport. So in the ideal world, this lorry will not stop nowhere. And now I think it has to stop in 7 or 8 different borders, fulfilling 7 or 8 different forms and so on. So if we work together on this in the framework of that we mutually accept, then the efficiency will come, not only transport. The same efficiency comes in energy, and it's not anymore science fiction that we all one moment become prosumers, that we produce and sell energy at the same time. So here in Slovenia, a farmer having a sunny plot can sell energy to Estonia, and this can happen if we work together. And I think this is the way forward that actually gives us the competitive advantage. And I truly believe that CEE countries can be a spearhead in this, because we have a lot of experience. You know, Europe, we are lucky that we are in the European Union. European Union is working in all this. You know, we have this idea of creating a common data space. But in practice, we know that this is not evolving in a pace we would like to. And I think this is the chance of CEE, that we have common history, we trust each other, we build common standards faster than the rest of the Europe, and we will catch them up.
Thank you. Marco?
Yeah. So how digitalization for better world, right? In so many different ways, right? But let's see what digitalization actually is causing, right? So what's the key impact which digitalization has, right? So typically, wherever we introduce digital technologies, we are typically removing friction out of the system. So something which is typically more time-consuming, resource-consuming. With digitalization, we are removing this and we make it cheaper, more efficient, faster, and so on. So this is the primary property or feature of digital systems, right? I agree with data interoperability and all these other things are also extremely relevant, but in the core, it's really this removing the friction, right? Now, before I was discussing artificial intelligence and technologies related to this, right? So what artificial intelligence is a very nice word used for catchy and so on, but in its essence, what is AI? AI is actually mastering the complexity, right? So AI is nothing else than just enhancing our capability by mastering complexity which, I don't know, human eyes, human ears, human understanding, reasoning, inference cannot do. It's just too much, right? So, for instance, nowadays, for instance, we can get every 4 days, we can get for free the whole picture of the Earth, right? So it's impossible to do it manually or in any other way except with some kind of AI. Even this is not easy, right? So this is mastering complexity, right? And now, the question where digitalization can help. Actually, I believe it can help in all aspects of life because this is getting very horizontal topic. It used to be very vertical, like in 80s, then in 90s with connectivity, and later on with all this data and AI. Somehow this became really horizontal topic, and it's influencing every aspect of the life. Now, for good and for bad, right? So next panel is on cybersecurity, right? So today we are kind of still safe because the bad guys are not using this yet, right? And we still have a little bit of time, right? So this can be two-sided sword, these technologies as well. So it removes friction also for the bad guys, by the way, not just for the good guys. And yeah, so beyond this saying that this is horizontal technology, the digitalization, and maybe AI as a forefront of it, it's better not even to go into the details. But generally, we go in a direction to make lives better, right? So the lives of people better, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Paulo, to make a better world.
You asked a very broad question. Yeah? If you had Elon Musk on the space, he would probably refer to his human-machine interface that he just presented a few days ago. So since I'm not Elon Musk, let me try to be a visionary in a slightly more applied way. One of the things that I'm really excited about is distributed working. And distributed working is, I would argue, the one thing where we have really been catapulted into a new normal by the crisis, as most of us have experienced ourselves, working from home and by video conference and having panels like this. Now, I think this is a great opportunity specifically for CEE. Let's be honest, I mean, the CEE countries have suffered a net brain drain, have suffered a talent loss because people were forced to move to global headquarters that typically are other parts of the world. Now, if we really establish a distributed way of working, we don't separate families, we allow people to work where they choose to have the center of their lives, of their private lives, and make this compatible with work, that is something I would be really excited about for this region.
Thank you. Now I will ask the same question also Mr. Moranger. How to make a better world with digitalization?
Thank you, and it's a big question, as colleagues have said. Maybe in one sentence, I think the overall, the key word for me is fairly evenly distributed knowledge. So if we could share overall digitalization tools and knowledge more and more speedy globally, I think we would end up as a better world. Today we have, I believe, half of the world's population, they have access to internet. So there is a huge opportunity. And can you imagine what will be the number of people with the learning capabilities once they get acquainted with all of these tools and opportunities? What brilliant stuff that they may come up with. So that would be my wish, and I do hope that the world will move in that direction. However, on the question of future, the common sense says future will bring what we make out of it. And on technology matter, I don't believe anything will slow down. Historically, technology just moves on and it progresses. And we shouldn't leave anybody behind. If I look at our current economies in CE, small and medium businesses are the backbones of our economies in most of our countries, if not in all. And I think it is crucial that these businesses have access to all of these tools and knowledges. And that would be, for me, a strong future outcome. I think I read a study by World Economic Forum even a few years ago where they say that 2/3 of our elementary school children will work in their jobs which are not even existent today. So we're going to see a quite strong shift. However, I'm very positive and optimistic because, like with any disruption, which for me means progress, I think new things will emerge. Time will be created for some brilliant inventions. So I'm quite optimistic in that sense.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Knudsen, the last question for you as well. Future trends, how can digitalization help to make world better in all the ways, environmentally, socially, culturally? Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. I think I'll turn the question upside down and maybe ask back, can we think of one single sphere of our future where the digital transformation is not the key to our success as human beings? I think not. Just a few examples. It's the fundamental reason why we are discussing the future of work. Maybe this conference is the future of our work. It is, I'm very certain, the key to securing well-being and a decent living standard for a planet that's about to host up to 10 billion people. It is, as I said earlier, maybe the best hope for getting back to productivity gains. It is perhaps the only way through technological advance at large that we can solve the climate crisis. We've seen that even a slowdown of 6% of our economy is not enough to reduce the carbon footprint for us to keep in line with the UN goals. So we need technological advance somehow if we are to meet the climate challenge. It's changing our daily lives. It's kept us in contact with our loved ones. It's kept us entertained. It's kept us working through this Corona crisis. It is in the form of data, what is perhaps the biggest or the most important new factor production in the 21st century alongside labor and capital. It's in every part of our society. It's our only hope for increasing our innovative capacity. But it's also the focus of geopolitical tension, now perhaps even more than trade. It's the focus of trade negotiations. It's the focus of ethical and political dilemmas. There's the risk of a new social digital divide. There are the security and privacy issues. We need to increase the network capacity if the digital transformation is going to be inclusive for all. So I can't think of one single sphere of society or planetary issues, if you like, for humanity, where the digital transformation is not going to be a key to our progress. But as I indicated, there are big promises if we get it right, but there's certainly also dangers. So that would be my answer.
Thank you very much, and thank you, the panelists, for your valuable contributions. I think we exhausted the time. No, we still have time? Oh, I thought that we. Okay, so we have some questions from the public. Yes, please.
Horticulture, agriculture. So my question will be for all. A couple of years ago, I was in Tallinn, and the host was Mr. Mixer. He was the Minister of Foreign Affairs a couple of years ago. And actually, we have a lot to learn and about digitalization by the Estonians. Just 1 million of Estonians, and they did a really, really great job. So the 20th anniversary of ISOC was hosting by the Estonia. It was in Tallinn, so it was a very, very big thing. Whole ISOC has 20th anniversary there, so they are our role models. So my question will be, how did we gain such boost in CEE region like they? So that's just my question for all the participants and the audience. So thank you for the answer.
One quick answer, which might be correct, right, is that this region has very good education, and this helps a lot. On one side, we are well educated on the natural sciences. On the other side, we have huge efficiency in business know-how, right? And yeah, so this combination somehow sounds kind of about right for this period of time to get this boost. This is my understanding, and knowing the region and my understanding of the mechanics, how these things work.
Yes, of course, I already a little bit touched this, but I return to this trust issue and just to explain, because a lot of people don't kind of realize that next panel will be on cybersecurity and all these issues that are related to the cyber the threats in the digital domain, and to have good public services or to build services between the countries, you need this trust in digital data, and if you do it right, the digital way of storing the data is safer. And but there is a simple example that do you know who, if your file is in the doctor's office or some big hospital, do you know who read this last time and what he was looking there? But I know who checked my medical file, because if the system is designed in a right way in the digital world, there are always traces. Of course, there are really bad guys who can sort of sneak there around, maybe without leaving a traces. But this is, in a well-designed system, very expensive. And it's not worth the effort to go after my or anybody else's data. So I think to build trust and real good quality systems is the target.
Mr. Muranje, Mr. Knudsen, do you have an answer to the question from the public? Okay.
No, I have a question. I have a question actually, which I can't sleep at night because of it, and maybe it sounds provocative, but it's really something that worries me very much. In the 20th century, there was probably a competition of different systems how to optimally allocate resources. And there was like, the totalitarian way or the centralized way, and there was the free market way, and, human rights way, democracy. And somehow even, we can argue which system is better, but by experiment, democracy won, free market won. We have a lot of SMEs because we found out that the best way to allocate resources is by giving the chances to everybody and find the optimum. Now we're talking about big data, and it seems that maybe, just maybe, to allocate the resources optimally for big data, you need big companies, you need big governments, you need powerful systems. So do we really believe that human rights and democracy is the best system and is the system that will win in the digitized world?
Let me try to take the question and to start and then invite everybody. It's a very deep question that you are asking. So let me reply maybe with two observations. So first of all, I think you are right. I mean, big data have big requirements. However, what I'm observing is that we are working as a company with the large companies in that field, but also with very small companies and academic institutions on data mining, on research, on artificial intelligence. And when I look at the results, I definitely think there is a pretty, I would call it democratic way on how and which working model can contribute best. The second answer that I'd like to give you is maybe something on the nature of big companies. I think we are seeing a tremendous change in the nature of big companies. In our company, we call it unbossing. And if you think about unbossing and put it on your tongue, that is the democratization of a large company. And we believe, and there's a lot of evidence, that in the new world in which we are, that is the one most important way to generate the creativity in a large company that can deal with digitalization, data, and the challenges of the 21st century.
I would just quick answer to Mark. Thanks for the question, right? So I guess we can have longer discussion, but the answer is really simple, right? Big data doesn't mean that the big companies would do it. Big data is really for small people. Because big data was done already in the past by big companies, right? So why big data got important? Because small companies can deal with this. An example of a small company is yours, right? Which does huge, more than big data, right? In the same way, so just to substantiate a little bit this claim, so today a student, undergrad student, or maybe good high school student with some programming knowledge can do things which we as a research community were not able to do like 15 years ago. It was impossible to do something which is like a toy for my son these days. So this is what changed, right?